Parshas VaYechi, we need to ask a very simple, but as we shall see, profound question. And that is, was Yosef ever moichel his brothers? Did he ever forgive his brothers for what they did to him, selling him down as a slave, and the years he spent in Mitzrayim, suffering in so many different ways? In order to answer this question, we need to look at Psukim at the end of the Parsha. After Yaakov Avinu was nifter and he was buried in Mitzrayim by his sons, they all come back to Mitzrayim, and the brothers are frightened. It was Yosef's custom to invite them to eat together, and now he stopped doing that. So they understood from that trouble is coming and that he's now going to take revenge, the justified revenge for what they did. And they told Yosef that our father told us that you should forgive us. Even though we did terrible things to you, you should forgive us. How did Yosef respond? He said, don't worry about it. Even if I want to do something bad to you, I can't do anything. Hashem's in charge. If Hashem wants something to happen to you, it will happen. If not, there's nothing I can do. Hardly comforting. He didn't say to them, I forgive you. He said, I can't do anything bad to you anyway. And he went further. He told them, I'm going to continue feeding you as I have, as Hapcha, your children. He seemed to be assuage to some degree. And he said to them, how's it going to look? Here you came down and you claimed to be the viceroy of Egypt's brother, and now he's going to kill you? So from both of these responses, the first, that he can't do anything without Hashem's consent anyway, and secondly, that it's going to look bad, doesn't sound like a mechila, does not sound like a forgiveness. And Rabbeinu Bachya points this out explicitly, and he says, since you see in the Psukim that's never mentioned anything that Yosef forgave them, he didn't forgive them. He didn't forgive them for what they did. The question you have to ask is, why not? We see Yosef did so much for the brothers. He was feeding them for all these years and their families. He set them up in Goshen so they shouldn't assimilate and they should be protected from the Egyptians. He had everybody in the country to have a milah so that they wouldn't stand out. Why would he be meichel? But more than that, we see that when Yosef exposed himself in Parshas Vayigash, first he said to them, as I explained extensively last week, he said to them, you're the ones who sold me down, but it wasn't you sold me down. Hashem shalachani, Hashem sent me here to feed you. And they said, Atem lo shalachtem osi, not that you sold me down and it was only Hashem's hashgacha, but that was what was set up from the beginning. You never sent me. Atem lo shalachani, you never sent me. Kilokim, only Hashem. So Yosef clearly recognized and explained the hashgacha to them, the divine providence, that he was there to take care of them. So it seems that he explained away the whole mechir in the first place, the whole sale in the first place. But more than that, the Rambam paskins at Hilchos Tshuva that if Ruvain does something wrong to Shimon, and Ruvain comes sincerely to apologize, that Shimon needs to be meichel him. Shimon needs to forgive him, even if it was something terrible. If Shimon comes sincerely, he needs to forgive him. And if he doesn't forgive him, the Rambam says he's an achser, he's a cruel person. Are we to think that Yosef was an achser, that he's cruel? It seems to be everything about Yosef is just the opposite. So this only begs the question further. Why wasn't Yosef meichel them? Why didn't he forgive them? The Ramah in Shulchan Aruch brings in Hilchos Yom Kippur that on Erev Yom Kippur it's a minig to go ahead and ask for mechila. People, anyone you did something wrong to, ask for mechila. And like the Rambam says, he should go ahead and be meichel. If he's not, he's an achser. But then the Ramah asks a caveat. He says, however, if the reason that Shimon won't be meichel Ruvain, if he will not give him mechila when he asks for it, is for his benefit, is for Ruvain's benefit, the one who did the wrong, even though he's asking mechila, it would be more beneficial for him not to have mechila, not to be forgiven, then that's all right. Okay. But what could possibly be the benefit to the brothers? Here they come. They want to be forgiven. They're scared to death that Yosef is going to take revenge on them. All they're asking is Yosef should forgive them. What could possibly to be to their advantage that there shouldn't be a mechila here? The Mabit in Beis Elokim explains that the assuage, the foundation of tshuva, is the following: Kiruv laHashem mirichuch hachet, to come close to Hashem from the mirichuch hachet, from the distance created by the sin. Says the Mabit, there are two levels of doing tshuva. There's a level of doing tshuva to try to get out of the punishment, because a person knows chas v'sholom, if he does an aver, he will be punished. If he does tshuva, that can absolve him from the punishment. Says the Mabit, but that's not real tshuva. That's not what tshuva is all about, because that isn't bringing a person closer to Hashem from what he did. It's just absolving him from the punishment. What's tshuva all about? It's coming closer to Hashem. The fact that when a person does aver chas v'sholom, he distances himself from Hashem. He gets Hashem to be angry with him. So to go ahead and remove that anger, to fix what was broken, that's the goal of tshuva. The relationship with Hashem has been broken, chas v'sholom, and now the goal is to restore that relationship, not just to get out of the punishment. We could say the following: Yosef wasn't meichel them, not because he wanted to be cruel, but because it was to their benefit. What was their benefit? The benefit was because you see in the entire parsha, the brothers never say, and you don't see that they feel bad for what they did to Yosef. They're scared they're going to be punished for what they did to Yosef. That's their concern. And you see that from the beginning of parsha VaYechi till VaYechi till right now. They're afraid that Yosef is going to take revenge on them. You don't see them say to Yosef, I can't believe we did what we did. I can't believe we're so cruel to you. How could you possibly ever forgive us? They're very concerned about themselves. So Yosef was not moichel them to attempt to force them to realize what the problem was, what they did, and fix it, and come for forgiveness to restore the relationship. Because as we see, the achdus of Klal Yisrael was broken. The brotherly love of Klal Yisrael was broken to the degree that there was no mechila in their lifetime, and their surugi malchus, they suffered because of this. This is how terrible is what they did. And this is what Yosef was trying to avoid, and we don't see he was successful. What is real forgiveness? Real forgiveness is when there's a real apology. I think it can be illustrated from the following story. This story happened not too long ago. And there was a young man, a younger man, who was divorced, and he was in Bnei Brak, and he had a place to stay. He didn't have any money. He was very sad, depressed. So a family took him in. And the balabas who took him in, he treated him wonderfully. He gave him a place to sleep. He fed him, took care of whatever he could. One day, this young man wakes up, and he starts yelling at the balabas, insulting him, hurting him, terrible things. And the balabas can't believe it. All he's done is taking care of this man. And he couldn't control himself. And he gave it back to the younger man in the head. He said, how can you talk like this? Look what I've done for you. How can you repay me like this? The younger man got so upset, he stormed out of the house, and the balabas never saw him again. Fast forward a few months, and the wife of this balabas says to her husband, we have an older daughter, and she needs to get married. Maybe you need to be meichel this yid who slaved in our house for what you said to him. The balabas said, what are you talking about? Do you know what he did? We took care of him. We did everything for him. He treated us like terrible. How I should apologize to him? He still apologize to me? She says, you know what? Do it anyway. It's Erev Yom Kippur. So he starts thinking to himself. Finally, he decides he's going to get the number. He finds out that this Yidden is now living in New York, and it's right before Kol Nidre, but in New York it's still late in the morning. He calls him up, and he says, you remember what happened a few months ago. I need to apologize. I'm terrible what I did, terrible what I said to you. I'm so sorry. And the younger man's listening to the whole thing. He says, I'm mohichi b'leiv shalim, but you got it all wrong. What I did to you. And they talked on the phone, and they each apologized to each other and shared chasim toivus with each other. Zehu, that was the Maisa. Comes Motzi Yom Kippur, and this balabas, his daughter, starts going out with a certain person, and it happens to be that by the middle of Sukkot, Chol Hamoed Sukkot, she's engaged. They're engaged. And he's going to have a vart right after Sukkot. He gets a call from this younger man, and the younger man tells him that he's in Eretz Israel, and he'd like to come see him. He wants to apologize to him in person. Of course, come over. And it turns out he comes to the vart. He walks into the vart, and he sees the balabas. He runs over to him, and he apologizes to him. There's tears in his eyes, and he starts dancing and dancing and dancing with him. The Baba says to him, well, what are you dancing about? He says, I'm a chassan. You're a chassan? This is my daughter's word, and you're also a chassan? What do you see? So Kadosh Baruch Hu understood that even though what prompted this balabas to say, I'm sorry, was he wanted his daughter to get married, but it must have been such an apology that once he got beyond that, he reached into the depths of his heart, and it was a sincere apology that Kadosh Baruch Hu granted him what he needed. And not only that, the apology from the younger man was also that he also was rewarded, because the Kadosh Baruch Hu saw the sincerity of what an apology really is. That's what real forgiveness comes from a real apology. And a real apology is something else. Because when a person gives a real apology, he's forced to break his own heart. And when he breaks his heart, it can be transformative, because now he begins to surrender to what's really inside of him, the deep compassion for another, the deep compassion within. And unfortunately, the Achi Yosef didn't reach that, and Klal Yisrael suffered for it. But we need to learn from this Maisa that Chas v'Sholom, if we're in a situation where we need to apologize, it has to be to fix what was broken. And from that, who knows what Yeshuas can come.